Good afternoon, everybody. Thank furlough, it's Friday once again. It's the 16th of October. It's great to have you all with us, and we look forward to a jam-packed session. I know there's a lot of things happening at the moment. I know there are a lot of you tuning in, so that means you're waiting there with bated breath, obviously, to hear me, but what you're really here for is to listen to Jacquie Mount, who's with me yet again. Good morning, Jacquie. Good afternoon, sorry, Jacquie.
Good afternoon, everyone. Lovely to be back with you.
A lot happening this week.
It's been a busy week, yes.
Yeah.
Last week, I left you with on tenterhooks waiting for the Chancellor's announcement, which actually we finished last week at about 5 to 3. And by the time I got up to the House, he was already speaking in the House of Commons. But nothing more than we announced last week we thought would happen, but we've got a bit more detail now. So, shall I dive in?
Yeah.
As you all are all aware by now, and if you're not, where have you been for the past however many weeks, the furlough scheme finishes at the end of this month, so not much longer for it to go. And I rather jokingly said last week that just as we thought it was safe to go out swimming again in the pool and the sharks are circulating, and yes, it's all changed again. And not only has it all changed, but as of last week, the Chancellor announced an expansion to the job support scheme for those areas who are going into lockdown. Now, literally, I don't know if anyone else has picked it up, within the last hour, as you're all aware, Liverpool is in tier 3. We have tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And tier 3 is the area where the new job support schemes are coming into place. And I'm just looking for the towns. Now, it was announced in the last hour that Lancashire has agreed to go into tier 3. So the towns that are going to be affected from midnight tonight will be, she says, frantically looking for the list, Blackburn, Blackpool, Burnley, Lancaster and Preston go into tier 3 from midnight. Now, as we are aware, tier 1 is everything is as normal as anything can be these days. Yes, there are restrictions. Tier 2, which is the high area, there are more restrictions. And because of those restrictions, some businesses may not be able to work full time. So the job support scheme is there so that if you are working part-time, sorry, for a minimum of a third of the working week, then the employer pays for, say, a third of the working week. And the remaining 2/3 of the unworked hours are split into 3 sections. Now, the employer pays 1/3 of the remaining at the normal hourly wage. The government will then pay the second third, which has to be paid upfront by the employer and then recovered through the JSS portal, which we think will open sometime early in December, if not before middle of November, possibly. Sorry. And then the employee will bear the final third themselves by taking no pay for that section. Now, what's happening with tier 3, and this is the announcement that was made last Friday, is that once you move into tier 3, a lot of businesses are going to have to close, and therefore they're not working at all, so the job support scheme doesn't apply to them. So what the government have now said is that if that is the case and businesses are forced to close, and in Liverpool, that includes things like gyms and leisure centres, but there is, I think, going to be a bit of comeback on that because the Lancashire area does not include gyms and leisure centres. They are apparently still allowed to open. And as you can imagine, the Mayor of Liverpool has been tweeting that, you know, he doesn't think this is completely fair. So we watch the space on that because this is going to be a very movable feast over the next week or so, I think. And what happens to businesses that have to close is that they can apply to the government for 2/3 of the wages. So we're almost back into the furlough scheme, where if they're completely closed, they pay 2/3 of the wages and they claim that back from the government. Now, I haven't heard yet whether that includes national insurance and pension contributions, and we're still waiting for the absolute final detail on that. I certainly haven't seen, and so I'm just looking. Some questions coming in on that already. Before I answer those, let me just finish the explanation on this. In addition to the payments for wages, there are grants available, which I think you get through your local authority. Now, if you are in tier 2, you can apply for a grant of £1,500 every 3 weeks. So that's £500 a week. You claim it every 3 weeks. But if you move up into tier 3 to help you on top of the payments for wages, the government is paying a grant to those businesses of £3,000 a month. Now, obviously, there are going to be restrictions on this. You're going to have to look at your own individual situations to see exactly where you stand with this, but that's the situation at the moment. So job support scheme, for tier 2, you are into working a minimum of a third, and the remaining 2/3 is split on funding between the employer, the government, and the individual. If you move up into tier 3, if your business is forced to close legally, the government will pay 2/3 of the individual's wages. If the business is in tier 3 but does not close, i.e. it still remains open, the standard job support scheme will come into play. So again, you're into looking at the minimum of a third of working hours. Now, it's going to be very complex to work this out. We don't know yet what's going to happen about looking at the hourly rates. We talked last week about going back to what it was the normal working week under the original furlough scheme. That is likely to have to come back into play now. So there's going to be an awful lot of information coming out of the next 3 weeks. Now, as far as updating you, we will get stuff out onto our website. I've updated the COVID-19 hub with as much information as I have at the moment. We have a new article up on the website, which is really very well, explains it really well. And so that's where we are from that. Now, we've got a couple of questions coming in, Garry.
Yeah, can I just mention one thing? Somewhere along the line, I heard that some of the grants are now not going to have to be repaid. Do you know which grants?
Grants are not having to be repaid, but they are taxable income, but loans will have to be repaid. So you've got the business interruption loan scheme and the bounce back loan scheme. Those are the ones which have to be repaid back, but do have a government guarantee. So if the company has to go into liquidation, the government will guarantee 80% of that to be paid back to the banks if the company is in liquidation and can't pay. Grants are just that. They don't have to be repaid back. They come mainly through the local authority, but they're taxable income, so they have to be counted as income in your accounts. Now, I did notice on one of the forums this week that I was reading that somebody asked the question of, do they actually record the grant income in the accounts, because it's going to skew the accounts, because the income is not just going to be from sales. But the answer is yes, you do have to show the grants as income in your account, and therefore it will be taxed, because it replaces the income that you're losing through not being able to operate at 100% of your level.
So what concerns me a little bit is that some of the banks, and I'm not sure if this will happen, but I know it did when we had the last crisis, not health crisis, but financial crisis, was that banks, faced with an organisation running a little bit light and therefore not able to fulfil its loan, it made more sense to them to completely bankrupt the company, because then the government would repay them, rather than stay with that company for that bit longer and try and eke it out. I don't know. I haven't heard anything about that this time, but I can see that sort of thing happening if we're not careful.
No, I haven't. The only thing I've got at the moment is that they are looking at this, because the bounce back loans in particular were very easy to get. There is an awful lot of fraud has been going on with the bounce back loans. And the latest figures are that they reckon that up to £23 billion has been borrowed on bounce back loans from companies who are never going to repay them, because they were set up purely to get the business bank loan. Yeah. And although you should have had, it's got to be a maximum of 25% of your turnover, and you're supposed to do this at the time, the banks were not really asking for that much proof on this. And I think a lot of businesses have managed to set up false companies, falsify accounts, claim the loans, and then within a couple of months they've disappeared and no one knows how to get the money back. And they reckon that nearly £28 billion has been borrowed from the banks. So something is going to crack at some stage, and let's just hope that our clients aren't going to get caught in the middle of this, for those who have genuinely gone into the loan and maybe are really struggling to pay it back.
We've also had one of our members this morning, I'll try and get the full information before we finish, who had received a very smart and official looking letter from HMRC saying phone this number now to activate your repayment code because you're due to get your tax back from previous years or something. I forget what it exactly was. The scams, I mean, HMRC don't do that sort of stuff, and I think we need again to stress you've got to be careful. Don't believe this sort of stuff. And also the telephone number on there which says you can check this out. Obviously you ring them up and it's a bogus person on the other end saying yes, we're HMRC, so don't believe that either. Go for your normal numbers, go to the HMRC website if you want to check something. Make sure that's what you do. You have to be very careful.
And also HMRC have got some really good webinars out there at the moment on how to spot scams. And also we're just about to put it out because I've just seen, I think it was earlier this week, the pensions regulator had a webinar on scams of pensions, because the other problem is that people are getting you to move your pension funds and things as well, which is outside COVID. But there are a lot of official webinars. So if you think you have been caught, and these people are very clever. I've seen the copies of these letters that you're talking about, Garry, and they are very, very official looking. And unless you really
typeface, same way of putting it on the page, etc.
Absolutely, absolutely. So do be very, very careful, because there is a lot going on out there. Bev has asked if there is any guidance on the Scottish situation. As far as I'm aware, for the devolved areas, so we're talking about Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, the same rules apply. Some of this is nationwide and some of this is purely for England, and Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland have their own schemes. Now, I have to say what I haven't done is separate it out. I really have not had time this week, unfortunately, to check what's happening in Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland. However, what I did pick up this morning is that government have increased the grants and allowances that it's paying to the devolved parliaments to enable them to increase that. So I will perhaps hopefully for next week try and see if we can come up with what the situation is in under the devolved. Angela has asked, good afternoon, Angela. Do we know if the JSS is based on the current hourly rate or the 1920 CJRS calculations? It's based on the current rate. It's based on what's actually being paid at the moment. So we've reverted back to normal wage because people are working. So therefore it's based on this year's work. However, the number of hours and that are worked go back to the old calculations for furloughing. And if you're involved in things like contractual overtime, commission, bonuses, depending on the nature of your job, you will have to go back, I believe, to the original COVID calculations that you did, use those figures, but update it for the current hourly rates that you're going to do. As I said, if we thought furlough was complex, I have a nasty feeling that this is going to be even worse. So any body that's got any ideas on this, you can always let me know, and we'll get more information out to you as we can. There's another one here from Faye has come up on the scams. I had a national insurance number that had been compromised, and that's the scam too. So yeah, these people are out there trying to do absolutely everything. Can I pick up the one from Debbie? There's an interesting question from Debbie Rowe. Good afternoon, Debbie. A quick question relating to redundancy and flexi furlough. A client's employee has been put on 3 months' notice of redundancy. Is it okay for the employer to claim flexi furlough for him during October? He will return to work in the last week of October to work the balance of his notice. Now, that's an interesting one, because under flexible furlough, you could pay them for working through redundancy. You can't pay the actual lump sum redundancy payments, but you can claim the flexi furlough money. However, from the 1st of November, if you are going onto the job support scheme, you cannot claim that if they're on a redundancy notice or if they are given redundancy up to and including the 31st of January. So if somebody is on a redundancy notice and we get to the end of October, you cannot claim for them under the job support scheme because it specifically excludes redundancies. So that might be a slightly more complex one there, Debbie.
Okay, we've had obviously a couple of things there from Angela. Surname Visor, which I think is quite fitting for the current times, and just something I heard of the other day. Actually, a lot of people haven't realised that if people are deaf or hard of hearing, obviously they can't lip read anymore. So there is a company now providing see-through face masks, which I thought was a brilliant idea.
I've got one. Yeah, I've actually got one. They're brilliant. There are some places that won't accept, but we've bought them because both Leslie and I really struggle with masks. And my neighbour suggested them, and yeah, they're glasses with the face mask on, and there is some new ones now that are literally fit to your face here, and that you've got glasses and they come down. Ours are the big ones that you see in shops, and actually they're very good, except that you can't wear them when it rains, you can't wear them when you walk into somewhere, Walmart you can't, because it's like wearing glasses, you steam up.
Steam up, yeah. Yeah, I was walking down the street yesterday, I think it was, and I couldn't see where I was going at all because I was steaming up. One here from Loretta Parry. My contract with the client ended in June. I've recently returned to the same company as executive assistant to the CEO on a self-employed basis. Do I need to set up separate Ford entity? Now, I heard a sharp intake of breath there. I'm sure Jackie will explain why in a minute. If I can take the last bit, however, there will be little or no bookkeeping involved. Sorry, but it's a good role for me. Don't apologise. You look after number one. Where does that leave my professional indemnity insurance? Well, the thing is, if there's any bookkeeping whatsoever, even if you are just overseeing any bookkeeping on behalf of your client, you will unfortunately still need to keep up your practice license. I mean, if it's a minimal income, you can get a discounted license, but the law still states that you are providing that service. It's not so much you're providing the service, it's just that you are party to accounts where you could potentially see something wrong. And if you're not a practicing bookkeeper, the onus isn't quite strongly upon you. So you would need that. Now, Jackie had a sharp intake of breath there, right? I know Jackie.
You know where we're going with this. Garry knows where I'm going with this one. My initial query there is that new post is not self-employed, it's employed, because you have a title and you work for somebody specifically. And I think if you go through the rules of self-employment, that might very well fail. And I think you might have to be employed in that post. I'm not sure you can do that as a self-employed person. Lorette, I really would suggest that you go onto the HMRC website and look under the self-employed stroke employed list, because there's a fairly lengthy set of questions and they will tell you at the end of that. And it is now something you have to answer a whole lot of questions. For example, can you work the hours you want to? Are you responsible? Can you put somebody else in to do the job if you can't do it? If you're off sick, could you say to someone who perhaps you might, another bookkeeper, for example, can you, under the COPE agreement, can you send them in? If the answer to any of those questions is no, you are quite likely to be treated as employed. So I think you need to do a lot more investigation on that one. I have been in that situation myself many years ago, where I changed the contract, and your employer stroke client could very well end up, if it is found that you're employed, not only will they, what will happen now is that HMRC will treat the amount of money that you claim from them as your net salary, not your gross. So not only do they then have to gross that up to make allowances for yours and employer's national insurance, but also for the tax, because you are no longer allowed to say, well, I'm doing this self-employed, I'm going to pay the tax at the end. So do look into that one, because I've got a funny feeling, my gut reaction is that that's an employed post, not self-employed post. But I won't belabor the point. Michelle Berry is asking, under the JSS, is the employer's third capped at £697.92? Yes, I think it is. The government third is a cap on the job support scheme. And it is expected that the employers will not top up the funds. So yes, I think that cap probably will apply to employers as well. On the other hand, if they're paying a third, the government's paying a third, if it's capped, you'll have to look into that slightly further when you come to actually do it. But the employers are not expected to increase their allowance. Otherwise, they could be assuming that they're actually working and you can afford to pay them more.
We've got an interesting one in from Paul Ingram following my note about the Hmrc scam. He says, good afternoon, Paul. Nice to hear from you. I had a call saying that I owed tax, and because I didn't reply, I was going to be taken to court, but to stop, I should pay a sum. I phoned HMRC to find out if it was true. They said I don't owe a penny. So this proves those scammers will try anything. Yeah, you know, the scum always rise to the surface, unfortunately, as they say. And really, there is so much going on out there which is not right. You know, we had somebody walking up and down the street here in the centre of London recently saying that people had to pay to park on a single yellow line because there were some sort of restrictions. And people were very stupidly paying £20 so that they could park there for an hour. And he presumably went away and had fun in the shops before they closed. There are all sorts of things going on. I think we've got to be very careful. I think as bookkeepers, you're probably a little bit more wary than most. I feel very sorry for the people who are sitting at home, cut off from everybody, who get a strange phone call and are thrown into some sort of panic by some awful person at the other end who's just interested in making a fast buck. So be very, very careful on that one. But thank you for that, Paul. Good to know that you were clever enough to miss that one.
Couple of things. I'm just going to move on to a couple of other points while we wait for some more questions to come in. Please remember that the 20th of October, which I actually believe is Tuesday, it's around about Tuesday, is the deadline for voluntarily going onto the HMRC and disclosing over or under payments under the furlough scheme. So if you still think that you maybe have overclaimed, then make sure you get your repayments notified by the 20th. Otherwise, if HMRC do run an investigation, then there is likely to be fines and penalties involved. However, as we know, our ICB members have all been really good about doing this. You spend a lot of time making sure that your claims are not fraudulent, and any small differences are not going to be taken into consideration. Please don't ask me how small is small, because the answer is we don't know. But if it's not significant, I mean, HMRC have got billions of pounds that they've got to investigate. They've got 11,000 investigations going on at the moment. So those of our members who may have made a slight miscalculation, I don't think you need to worry too much unless you are absolutely confident that you got it wrong, in which case you are liable to correct that. So that's that one.
Right. Whilst you're on, just to say there that we had a meeting of the Advisory Council on Wednesday, another excellent meeting. They had it slightly later in the day, so they weren't able to come on and share contacts with you as they have done for the last couple of months. They'll be doing that again when they do their next one, but because everybody was rather busy looking after clients, we moved the meeting till 2 o'clock, so it ran at the same time as ICB TV did. And I'd like to just thank Sobi and Alex for taking over, because Amy Copeland was involved in the ADCO meeting, providing them with some feedback on everything that's going on at ICB. They did a fantastic job. We've been trying to get Sobi to go on screen for such a long time, and she always has said she can't because she doesn't feel confident, but you certainly wouldn't have known that. And Alex certainly popped in there, and they have been compared to various double acts, including whatever his name is, and Judy. So they did really well, and that was a good day. So thanks for that. One of the things that we have done, or they have done, is they've set up a working group which is going to be looking at the number of practices that are now growing and are going to need additional assistance, because there's a lot more to running a firm of 3 than a firm of 1 only. And people are requiring additional information, assistance, guidance. So we're looking at everything that ICB does to be able to offer, well, I'll call it a tiered, although tiers is not the most popular word at the moment, obviously, but we will be doing that. And we were very pleased that they welcomed on board Suzanne Proctor from Aberdeen. Suzanne is on there now as to represent Scotland, which is good to have somebody back there. And we do have a couple more vacancies at the moment. If anybody from the Northwest is interested in putting their name forward to come on to the council, so that's sort of Cumbria, Lancashire, Cheshire, Merseyside, somewhere like that, anywhere along there at all. We have got some people in mind. We might be contacting you very shortly, but if you'd like to preempt that by telling us you'd like to work on council and help support the Institute and the members, then please let us know. But the Advisory Council is actually taking on a lot of work at the moment. but they are very, very helpful to ICB. They keep their hand on the rudder and make sure we don't go off course or various other things, and being able to bounce ideas back off people who are actually working at the chalk face, as I call it, has been extremely helpful, and I think ICB is much better for it, and you, the members, are benefiting from that very close working relationship that we have. Jackie.
Yeah, two quick points. Firstly, Shelley's come up and said, did I say 20th of October or November for corrections to CJRS? It's the 20th of October. It's next week, Shelley. Now, I've just put up in the chat line a telephone number and a website address. I mentioned about the bounce back loans frauds and the amount of fraud. HMRC have just announced a telephone number and a web address. If you are aware that somebody has, or you believe somebody has actually fraudulently claimed a bounce back loan, then there is a free phone number to ring, or the covidfraudhotline.org, on which you can find a form where you can report what you think might be a fraud along that line. So you've got the 0800 587 5030 phone number, or covidfraudhotline.org. So that's that one. Suzanne Proctor, you must have heard, her ears must have been burning, Gary. Has anyone heard of HMRC calling to say that they are doing a survey? I wonder if there's anything that they can help with for small businesses. I don't think that HMRC would cold call like that, is my gut reaction. But again, if anybody does get involved in that, do be very careful. And how do you ascertain that? Is it? I've certainly not heard of anything.
No.
Any calls for evidence from HMRC would either come via an email if you've signed up for HMRC newsletters, notices. As I've said before, they're extremely useful. I've just signed up to some of the Companies House ones, and I'm getting a lot more information coming out from Companies House. And you can sign up for newsletters, items of information, and things like calls for evidence. Now, the reason I mention it is that if HMRC are doing a survey, they are likely to announce it through that medium. So you would get it if you subscribe to it. But the answer really, Suzanne, is no, I certainly haven't heard of it unless anybody else has.
No, not been mentioned to anybody I've been talking to, but we'll find out and see if we can post something on that.
Judith has come up. Random fact, Lloyds Bank have changed payments and credits about on the bank statement. So I paid in now on the left and also taken off the bank sheet number. Right, okay. This one is to do with, this goes back years, this one, when we used to teach manual double entry bookkeeping. And as you're all aware, when you run the bank account, your debits on the left, credits on the right. But the bank was always the other way round. And one of the things that we used to teach when I was teaching bookkeeping was the fact that the bank statement was always the opposite way around. And why was that? And that was because the double entry system within a business, debits and credits, works outside the business as well. So a debit in your account is a credit in the bank statements account. Now, I know over the years they've been moving things around so that it actually makes more sense to people that receive the bank statements. So I'm wondering, Judith, if that's the reason for that. But that's brought back. Right, you are really busy today, and I need to get on, so I'm going to clear that one down. A client has had a penalty notice for failure to file PAYE returns on time to the quarter ending 5th of July. Client has a small market stall and had furloughed the only 2 staff. I have appealed against this and hope to be successful. Has anyone else had this problem? I think the penalties are automatically generated if you don't do your RTI return by whatever date you pay them. You will get an automatic penalty. And I suppose if you're going to appeal for it, you may very well be lucky in that under the circumstances. But it's watch this space on that one. I have done some appeals against late submissions many years ago, and I have to say I was never successful in those, because if you're late, you're late. And you know, it might be under COVID that there is an extension, but any extensions I think ended at the end of June, so July may have been that. Okay, so that's that one done. I'm just clearing these down so I can see what we've still got to deal with. Done that one. Oh, Michelle Berry said she was called by a marketing company doing a survey. So that's maybe the HMRC query that came up before. So again, it's a question of whether you want to get involved in it.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, they might use external people, but I think it's probably unlikely. It's just a phishing exercise as far as
I think it might be. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Terry, good afternoon, Terry. Terry Rand, Jackie. I saw on a forum this week that if anyone received the 25,000 or 10,000 hospitality grant, say mid-April, it should be declared in the year eligible, i.e. 1920. Is this true? We're talking accruals versus cash receipts here, aren't we? I think it should be allocated to the year in which the payment or the receipt or the grant accrued. Now, again, it's obviously going to depend on your year end. If the year end is March, lockdown was the 1st of March. So if you applied for the grant for that, maybe you should apportion it across the 2 years, split it for however long it lasted across the 2 years. I might have to look into that one, Terry, and get back to you. So if anyone else has got any ideas, then please let me know. And somebody's asked you, Gary, can you repeat the person's name for the Edinburgh branch? That's your Edinburgh.
Right, let me just check out. Repeat it if I haven't. I don't think I've said it.
No, I didn't. I wasn't sure I heard you say that anyway. But the chairs, you can find on the website actually.
It was Suzanne Proctor from Aberdeen. She has been elected to the council, so that's who I mentioned. So if you want to get in touch with her, if you just call up the institute and ask for Kerry. Kerry looks after all of the branches. She'll put you in touch with your local chair. It might be easier just to pick up the phone and ask, really, because we do have quite a large number of emails coming in this morning. We had a meeting on, I think it was Tuesday or possibly Monday. During the 45 minutes of that meeting, we had 232 new emails coming in. So yeah, we're not exactly buckling under the strain. We're taking on employees like there's no business. We've taken on 4 now so far. So we are getting round to this, and we are trying to keep it supported. But so I've mentioned many times before, if you send us an email, please don't send another one 30 seconds later saying, well, when it'll be answered. But, you know, yeah, if you haven't heard within an hour or so, then obviously you have the right to give us a ring. We will try to get back to you as soon as possible. And if nothing else, we'll send you a holding note to say we're trying to get hold of somebody. I know, Jackie, you are answering technical queries at the moment like they're going out of business.
Yeah.
And we've just had the note of our monthly queries that are sent out to our legal advice line, and they're reaching record levels as well. And one lady this month has had 26 assistance calls, and we've had a word and to make sure she is okay. And I think, yeah, she is just getting into a little bit of a panic with things. So I think we've calmed her nerves. We've steadied the wheel, as it were, and now everything is okay, which is what we're here for. And you know, that's why we try to see if anybody's getting rather a lot of help and assistance to make sure, you know, do you need a bit more training? Do you need help? And this particular lady was very pleased that we'd spoken to her. So that's good.
Okay, quick question up from Usha. Speaking of HMRC emails, I received one from team.agent@hmrc.com. As I had missed one of the webinars, there was an attachment with it that I haven't opened as I felt it could be a fraud. Please be careful, everyone. If you do book in for an HMRC webinar, they will do a follow-up after that. If you do or you don't actually watch it, and they will send you all the support. So it's probably not a scam, that one. If you have booked in for it and you regularly get emails from that particular address, just check the address, because if it's a scam address, there will be something else in it, I think, that shows it up as a scam, although it might be just a small extension or something onto the end that's not right. But do check when you book in for an HMRC webinar, you will get a response from them, and check the email on the response. But I think hopefully that one will be all right. It's probably the attachment to the notes and the presentations that they show. And Debbie has come back and said, you also get an HMRC PAYE penalty notice for non-payment of employer's NI, where HMRC haven't applied the employer's allowance to a PAYE account yet. I was told by an HMRC employee to ignore the letters as it was a known issue. Now, we've talked about employer's allowance quite a lot over the past few weeks. If in doubt, you can ring HMRC and sort of get an answer. You can usually get through to someone. It might take a while to hang on, but do try, particularly if you're an agent. The agent helpline is working reasonably well at the moment. So, okay, before I take any more, I'm just going to pick up on the last couple of notes I've got on COVID, things that have cropped up this week. Companies House, during the initial period of the lockdown, Companies House removed all penalties for late filing of annual returns and accounts. That has now ended, and penalty notices are now being issued if you are late with submitting your year-end accounts. However, Companies House are aware that due to COVID, there may be good reasons why those are still late. And there is now on the Companies House and HMRC gov.uk, there is a link to being able to appeal against that penalty online. What you have to do is, I think you have to fill out a form, and then you have to upload some evidence. So, for example, if you've been off sick or in hospital with COVID or something, it has to be COVID related. Or if your business has been badly affected and you can prove that that's because of bank statements and things like that, then you can file an online appeal for that, and hopefully that will go through. That's new. I only saw that, I think that came up either yesterday or this morning, that link. So that's fairly hot off the press. And the only other grant a new grant that I've heard of this week, Test and Trace. Now, if Test and Trace works, and yeah, we all know on the news that a lot of it isn't working, but where Test and Trace works, if somebody gets a contact to say that they've been in contact with someone and they have to self-isolate, and that might mean that they can't go to work, and therefore they might have to be put on sick pay. Now, we all know sick pay is very low because they was fairly soon they won't get furlough payments for it. If that is the case, you can, from the 28th of September, if this has happened to you, you can actually apply for a £500 grant towards recompensing your income. Now, that's not open to everybody. It's for low earners who would otherwise be affected, because people like us who are able to work from home can carry on working even if you can't go into the office. But if you're perhaps someone who goes out, does hourly paid work, and you can't go to work anymore, and if you're a 0 hours contract and you're not going to get paid, you have to be on either one of the listed benefits. So things like universal credit, housing benefits, all the benefits that were always around but haven't moved over to universal credit yet, or you're on a low income. You can apply for that, but you apply through your local authority, not the government on that one. So that's available from the 28th of September. All of this, by the way, is going in, it will be in this month's newsletter whenever that goes out. I'm putting all this down, and we're putting stuff on the COVID Hub, as I've said. I think I have got some other, oh yes, one more. Working from home allowance. If you are working from home, those of you who are self-employed and or who do self-assessment returns will know that there is an allowance, which was always £4 a week, that you could claim against your tax for working from home. Now, from April, that's been increased to £6 a week on a simplified expenses. And if your employer is saying that they need you to work from home, you can do one of two things. Either the employer can pay that £6 a week to you, and it is a tax and liable free benefit to enable you to pay any extra bills. Or possibly contribute towards any items of expenditure that you've had to buy because of working from home. Or if that's not the case, you can apply for it directly if you're not getting that allowance from your employer. Now, to do that, you'll need to go onto your personal tax return and go through the apply for a tax rebate. Now, if you're employed, you're unlikely to get it actually as a rebate, but you'll probably will get it through a reduced tax code. Now, the thing is, it's a question of when you apply, because this is going to be over the period of time. So I'm not sure whether you can make just one claim or more than one claim. So you might have to wait till whenever, at the end of the tax year, or at some stage when you know exactly how many weeks you've worked at home, and possibly make an allowance. Now, that's the equivalent to you actually getting £1.20 a week off your tax bill for a basic taxpayer, and £2.40 if you're a higher rate taxpayer. As I said, likely to be reduced on your tax code, but if they're going to reduce your tax code, they need the total amount that you're claiming, and then they'll reduce the tax code to your employer, so that the next time you get paid, you'll get it back against your tax. You can go onto your personal tax account. If anyone doesn't have a personal tax account, they really should start to set one up, because if you're employed, it shows you details of everything you've been paid so far, the tax you paid, the national insurance you've been paid. You can look, if you're still working, you can look at what your pension, your state pension forecast is likely to be. There is a whole host of information on there, which if you have a tax agent, the tax agent does not see, by the way. Those of us who are tax agents will know that you don't get access to your client's personal tax accounts, but that may very well change. If we've got time this afternoon, I want to talk about some stuff that's coming up from the Office of Tax Simplification this week. Actually, it came up.
And don't claim the working from home grant if you've been furloughed.
Not if you've been furloughed, no, because you're not working.
No,
you have to be working, but you don't have to be working at home full time. So if you're working at home, say 3 days a week, and going into the office 1 or 2 days a week, then you can still claim the full £6 allowance. It's not prorated, but not if you're furloughed. Absolutely right, Garry.
Right.
So that's that one. I think that's all I've got on COVID-19 stuff.
Whilst you're just looking for your next foray, can I just mention to everybody Summit this year takes place on Tuesday and Wednesday. We were going to be Monday, Tuesday, as we have been for the last couple of years, but the technical team decided they wanted to test out a few things on Monday to make sure it all worked, so that it was ready for Tuesday, Wednesday. So that's fantastic. We've got a huge number of events taking place during those 2 days. And the good thing is that you can't possibly see all of them over the 2 days. It's just too much. But all you do is you book in, and they're yours for however many months it takes to read. I think you get them for up to 3 months after the actual event. So you can nip into the bits you want to see. If you want to see 2 events that are taking place at the same time, you watch the one of your choice, and the other one is there for you a bit later. Now, we've just had a demonstration from Amy. She demonstrated to us, and then to the Advisory Council, our new platform, which we brought in specifically to help with this. And the Advisory Council said they were completely bowled over by it. It looks fantastic. So there's lots of stuff to do in there. What I suggested to Amy, I'm not sure if she's managed to do it, so I'm sure she'll shout at me if she hasn't, but rather than expect everybody to do everything on the Monday and get everything prepared so that we know what we're doing, we're going to try and bring it back to the Sunday, because those of you who've been to conference for the last years will know that on Sunday evening we normally have a relaxed drink, can I call it, in the bar, and quite a quiet, laid-back affair, but never mind. And what I've said is that actually, if we can get the system up and running on the Sunday, so that actually people can have a play around with it, because there's all sorts of things in there. You can have meet-up rooms when you can meet up with people from your branch, from your area, or just your friends that you've met in the past, but this year you're only going to meet remotely. There will be discussion set areas. There'll be areas for each of our sponsors, and the big sponsor this year is Xero. Xero have been with us since the very first conference. They turned up with as a small company with a small stand at our very first one at the Department for Business Innovation and Skills, as it was then, at 1 Victoria Street. But of course, recently, their head man over here, Garry Turner, has become an absolute prize talker speaker on our stage every single year, and he's got another spot this year again. And it's interesting to see that they are one of the biggest supporters of bookkeepers. I mean, they started mentioning them in their publicity a long time ago. I think a lot of that was to do with Garry and the fact that his mum was a bookkeeper herself. So he was brought up as the son of a bookkeeper. But yeah, it's going to be ram jam full. It's going to be great. So we've also got lots of other sponsors that we're really pleased to have, and they're all on our website. They're all listed, but obviously we've all worked with Sage since day one, and Intuit are really the rising stars out there as well at the moment. So they're involved. And the list just goes on and on. But we've got a huge amount of stuff going on. We've got some very good. We've got various panel discussions, tech trends changing the way SMEs do business. And that's with Xero. We've got Tide Bank coming on that. Why bookkeepers are tomorrow's most promising entrepreneurs. A look at the profession and the trends that are shaping it. Now, we are very fortunate to have a television star with us on that occasion, Juliet Foster, who looks after the Sky's business program, those of you who watch it. Now, we thought she might want to interview one of our politicians that we're attracting and trying to sort out with at the moment, because that's the sort of thing she does. But when we gave her the brief about our members and who you were and what you were doing and all the rest of it, she was so adamant. She said, I just love your members. I want to talk to members. I'm not interested in politicians. That's my day job. So let's talk about it, because you are the rising stars. You are so important to business. And you know, it's been an eye-opener for her, which is great, because I'm hoping that's going to be reflected on her Sky programs in future. But we've also got a bit of an international audience on that. We've got Alison Ball, those of you who remember Alison from her Intuit days here in the UK, moved back to America and has recently moved on to another tech startup. She's going to be on there. Heather Smith, who many of you, if you're involved with social media, will know Heather. She is the queen of the apps, as it were, and you know, you'll know her from Australia. So that's going to be big. We've got tax strategy after COVID, Keris McDonald from HMRC. What else have we got here? Corporation tax and personal tax refresher update. Now, that's very popular. We've had a lot of bookings for that already. That's Rebecca Bennyworth, OBE. Making tax digital for income tax. We've got Werner Gilvier from HMRC. IR35 update with Martin Jackson. CIS changes coming in 2021. A bit of a newbie there for us. That's somebody called Jacquie Mount. Payroll update from Ian Holloway that was very, very popular when we first started these ICB TV programs. And so you'll get a gist. There's a lot going on. So there will be keynote speakers up on our virtual stage. They'll be backed up by all these other things as well. As I say, it's 2 days and you can come in and come out as you wish, but it's going to be a whole load of fun. And of course, alongside Summit, as always, we will have the Luca Awards. A little bit more difficult this year, but we will be running, and we'll be giving you a lot more information about this. But look out for the emails coming out to ask you to vote for things like your favorite software. There's a big one coming out shortly about which is your favorite business bank, which you know, who served you well. And I've read recently that actually some of the major banks are no longer starting small business accounts, but we know that people like Revolut and Tide still are. So that it could mean that this year, perhaps they're going to feature a little bit more prominently than people like Barclays who've won in the past. But so that's really important. And also, if you feel that you've done something special and you want to get your name put forward, find somebody who agrees with you, second you, put your name forward, get a good application in. And getting a Luca can mean so much. Even being nominated for a Luca, as I've said so many times before, look, that looks good on your website. It's good for your clients, etc. So let's get that done. So the Wednesday, which is the 18th, that's a very, very important day for you as bookkeepers, because that's the day that we raise the cup again this year. But this year, even more pertinent, even more important, because of the work that you've all been doing as bookkeepers for the last, I think, 6 months now, isn't it? 8 months. Preparing your clients so that they get their businesses in place for picking up the grants or the furloughing, etc. I mean, you have absolutely gone above and beyond. Now, what I want you to do is get your team, get your family, get your dogs and cats or whatever, raising a cup on that day. Send us a selfie. let's have a look at it. It'll all be flashed up on screen throughout that day. We've got people beginning in New Zealand, which is the furthest away from us, and ending over in America and Canada. So it's really important that we show solidarity as a group, because you've done a great deal, and you deserve that recognition. So get your clients to say, to raise a cup, send us through the picture, who the client is, and we'll put that up on there as well, so that they get their bit of publicity, the fact that they're using an ICB bookkeeper. So whatever you do, take advantage of that day. That is your day. Right, Jackie.
I was just about to say on that one, moving around the world with the Raise a Cup Day, it reminds me of Nor'Aid Santa traveling around the world, and they have Nor'Aid Santa, we have Raise a Cup Day as it goes around the world. Oh, it's great. Okay, couple of questions come in. More of a comment, I think. Nicola Payne, good afternoon, Nicola. I've been contacted by my local council to submit a declaration regarding the 10K race grant and what other state aid I'd received during the year. I've also helped a client to do this too. So hopefully, that's of interest to people. Thanks for that, Nicola. Now, Michelle Berry's come up with an interesting query. Can the working from home allowance be processed via the payroll, although the employer does not wish to pay the £6 as a minus BIK benefit in kind to reduce tax and NI, instead of filling out the form and doing it via self-assessment? I think the answer to that is no, they can't. It either has to be paid, and it is a non-taxable, non-deniable benefit. So if your employee is going to pay you the £6, they pay you the £6 out of theirs, they can then claim that back against their corporation tax or their own self-assessment, because it's a legitimate business expense to them, and you get the £6 in your pay packet, as it were. Now, if the employer doesn't want to do that, then you claim it yourself back through your personal personal allowance. If you're doing self-assessment, that's slightly differently, because self-employed individuals would include that if they're working from home as part of their simplified expenses anyway. But no, I think it's either got to be paid in full by the employer or claimed back against the tax code individually through the personal tax account. And Alison Bradley's just come back and said, I've just this minute had an email from HMRC telling you how employees should claim the working from home allowance. Yeah, I got that this morning. There's a nice little link in there to follow this sort of link and start applying now, and it takes you through. You do have to go in through your personal tax allowance. So I think that's those. And there is something on the chat line from Desi Coliva. We've just been contacted by HMRC for making inquiry and checks. We have customer employee contracts, payslips and calculations from the HMRC online calculator. Would this be okay and enough? Well, the rules were, Desi, that if you've used the HMRC calculator to calculate your furlough payments, they will accept that. So that is sufficient evidence as long as you've kept them and as long as you've obviously put the correct information in. If you haven't used the calculator, providing that your calculations are full and you can match them against contracts, that should be fine as well. We did speak quite a lot about that in the very early days when we were talking about that. So I've answered Nicola's, I've answered Alison's.
I've just been asked for a bit more information about the summit. Where do they find the information? So you can get to it through the normal website, but actually the best way to do it is we have a separate site now called Bookkeepers Summit, all one word, .com. The first 600 or so tickets have already gone, but there are still tickets available. Price for a ticket now for a member is £62, and we haven't quite finalised all of the agenda yet, but at the moment that means there is somewhere in the region of about 30 hours worth of content being crammed into that. So it works out at around about £2 an hour for your CPD, which can't be bad. Anyway, it's worth looking at. The other thing is, if you've got a team, and you purchase 5 tickets or more, then there is a discount. And if you go on to bookkeepersummit.com, it will tell you all about it. And it's a completely new one for us this year, obviously. Although we did the Inspire tour, we did that very much Zoom-based. This one is a complete business software. And Amy came up with some strange figure the other day when she was doing her presentation. I think she's looked at 80, I'm sure she said 85 different platforms to come up with this one. So I think she's gone platform crazy, but I think it's really good. I looked at it the other day and thought it was fantastic. And we're still trying to figure out what to do about next year. I mean, this is the first time I've been back on my home base for a little while. And last week, those of you who are on will know that I was walking around Leicester Square because we were looking at a brand new conference centre there. And the chances are that we could be using that. But we're not really quite sure whether you're all going to be wanting to meet up with each other because it will be a great relief and you'll be just missing everybody so much, or whether you won't be wanting to risk it, or actually the way things are going, whether we'll still be furloughed and various other things. I mean, there are so many unknown quantities here, but we're going to work on the basis that next year being our 25th anniversary, we're going to do something big and special. We're going to do something, hopefully, as a group, but we'll keep you informed on that. But whatever you do, don't forget, book up for the Bookkeeper Summit this year.
I was talking to Amy, well, I was emailing with Amy this morning. As Garry said, I'm doing at least one of the presentations on the technical side. I think I'm actually doing a lot more than one, but we haven't finalised it yet. But I think a lot of those are going to be recorded, but we've got to be available to give questions and answers. And I understand what Amy's looking at the moment, as she told me this morning, is that I think we explained before that there are rooms. It's just like going into a hotel. I agree with Garry. It's an amazing platform. And you can actually book rooms and you can have up to 12 people in a room sitting around a table. Now, what will happen is that the speakers like myself will be able to book a room and you can come and quiz us online live. So if the first 11 people will actually get onto the screens and the others will be able to do what we're doing now, put questions up. And the idea, I think, is that we actually have an online live discussion on any topics that we've done. So not quite sure how that's going to work, but looking forward to it. So it's going to be a really, really packed, exciting 2 days. So yeah, if you want to come and quiz us.
It's a bit more like a Facebook, I think. From what I can see, you can put your photograph up so that your face sits over a chair and all this sort of stuff. You can put your profile up. Then if you want to talk to specific people, if you say, is anybody out there from, I don't know, Stratford-on-Avon, can I talk to you? You can do that. You can put messages up. You can greet people. Whenever you're on one of the presentations, you can actually look at all of the other people who are listening as well. Because you think, oh, right, no, she's watching as well. Oh, hi, Jane, here we are. And all that. So, I'm
hoping to get to play on it.
As much fun playing with the system as it is listening.
I'm hopefully, Amy's promised me that I will get to start playing with the system as soon as possible when it's finalised. So hopefully I've got a lot of stuff to get up on there. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So I think the next 4 weeks is just going to whiz past getting ready for this. But anyway, okay, couple of questions. Kirsty St. John. Hi, Kirsty. I applied for the 10K granted discretionary as a charity, and the local council keeps asking about the state aid, but the letter says if not receiving anything else, you don't need to do anything. But they keep sending the letter, no phone number, and I've emailed back, worried that the 10K will get requested back. Now, I'm not too sure about that one, Kirsty. I would hope that it's just one of these things where if you haven't actually gone back and filled something online, even though it tells you not to, the letter's just going to keep churned out, kept being regenerated. So hopefully they won't ask for it back, and you'll be able to get that sorted. It's not actually one that I've heard of, Kirsty. Judith says, do we need any special equipment to use it? Presumably the Summit platform?
No.
That's the case. No, it's just like this one, you just book in.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit like a Zoom, but it's just fancy and it's got more buzzers and whistles. I mean, it helps if you know your way around a keyboard, obviously, or a touchscreen or whatever it is. I think the idea is if you get hold of it early enough, have a bit of play around, put up your information, put up anything that you want to do. Obviously, it's not set in stone. You can change it as you go through. You can decide to hide yourself if you don't want people to know you're listening, and all this sort of stuff. And you know, if you don't want to hear from somebody, you can disappear and various things. So but your details are all totally private and confidential. Nobody can find out who you actually are unless you say, I want you to know. So if you want to go into the Xero stand, for example, well, they'll be doing product demonstrations, you can listen, or you can watch, or you can say to them, please get in touch. They won't know you're there until you tell them that you are. So, you know, we're not, the integrity is completely honoured to make sure that doesn't happen. So, you know, we're always very keen with this.
Okay, a couple of things outside COVID that have cropped up this week. Just a very quick one. I'm not sure anybody is involved in their businesses, the clients who are involved in IR35. If you don't know what IR35 is, I'm not going to go into that today because it's extremely complicated, but apparently if you're involved in that, it is to do with limited companies and agencies and employing people. So you have an intermediary between the worker and the company they're working for. Apparently, if you're involved in agencies and IR35, there is a glitch in the HMRC system, which they are aware of and are trying to solve. And apparently it's a legislative issue that has to go through the Finance Act. So I doubt if anybody is involved, because I think it's going to be for larger companies, probably slightly larger than those that we would normally deal with as ICB bookkeepers, but worthwhile watching out for if you're involved in bookkeeping for an agency that deals in IR35. Very interesting document came out from the Office of Tax Simplification this morning. They have been asked to look into how HMRC works and all its business, personal tax accounts, self-assessment and everything else. Now, without going any further, that is a huge topic. Now, this is not a call for evidence. They've not gone out to the general public for comments, like we've got one at the moment that I'm working on simplifying capital gains tax, which is in itself interesting, trying to work out how it works rather than how to simplify it. But this is something where they have gone out and they have interviewed people in HMRC, the Treasury, various other agencies that are involved in this, to look at the various issues that might occur or be occurring, which can be simplified. Now, one of the some of the recommendations that they've come up with is the first one, and I'm not covering all of them. It's a huge document. If anybody wants to read it, you can pick it up from the Office of Tax Simplification. These are only recommendations. These are not being brought into force at the moment. They're what OTS are recommending that HMRC should try to introduce to simplify the whole process. The first of which is something which is music to my ears, and that's to combine the personal and the business tax accounts. Now, when these two accounts were set up, HMRC's decision was that they should be kept very separate. So if you are self-employed, you will obviously have a business account. And if you're employed or retired and not in self-employment, you have a personal tax account. And those of us that do both will have two accounts. Now, as an agent, you can see your clients' business accounts, but you can't see their personal accounts. And we moaned about this like mad. All the professional bodies argued about this at the start. But apparently at the start, when this was set up, it was decided by HMRC to keep them separate, partly because they're on two different systems, and HMRC are moving from their old platform to a new platform, and at the moment ne'er the twain shall meet, and anyone who's involved in MTD will understand that there are two systems, two logging on things. It's quite complex at the moment. If you're doing a business tax account, you can actually see a certain amount of information on your client's personal details. So for example, if you're doing a self-assessment return, they're self-employed but they're also employed, you will be able to have access to the information that comes up when you tick they are employed. It will pre-fill the various boxes it needs to pre-fill. But what you can't get access to is things like tax credits, child tax credits, child benefit, all those sort of things you do not get access to. And HMRC's view always was that the tax agent should never have access to the personal information, even though a vast amount of people who employ a tax agent do that because they want their tax agent to do absolutely everything for them. So it's interesting that one of the recommendations from the OTS is that as soon as possible, how long as soon as possible is for HMRC. Much as I love and admire the work that they do, we have no idea if this is going to happen or when this is going to happen. Various claims and reliefs and things that people claim. They're talking now about being able to do this outside of a tax return. Now that has happened actually with this latest £6 working from home. That can be claimed outside doing a self-assessment return. So the first of that has already been introduced. I love the one that they said, please improve the functionality of online forms. Now, anyone who's tried to find a form or complete a form online, some of them are not the easiest to do. So they're looking at doing that. And they're also looking at recommending simplifying flat rate expenses and those sort of streams, which on the face of it seem fairly okay, but there are some nuances in there which can get very complicated depending on what flat rate expenses, whether it applies or whether it doesn't apply. They're looking at doing that. And the other two that I picked up, and I only got through about the first 15 pages of this, was to look at participator loan interest. Now, if you are a director of a company and you have a business loan from the company and it's not repaid by the end of the tax year, you have to pay up to 32.5% tax on the amount of the loan that you've had. When you pay the interest back, you are able to claim the loan back. Now, it can take quite a long time to get that back, and they're looking at simplifying that. So if you're in that situation, watch this space. And things like short life asset claims, where perhaps you can't claim everything, it's short life, but you're not claiming it through annual investment allowance or capital allowances. So lots of things going on there at the moment. So a lot to watch out for. We look to see what's coming out. So OTS, great job. As I say, I ploughed through the first 15 pages of something which looks as though it's going to be about 80 to 100 pages long. They do things very fully when they do it. That's Bill Doswell, our friend at OTS, who's
yeah, and we've got the OTS coming along to conference as well this time. Yeah. Just to mention that we are looking at the moment, we're in the process of producing a template for people to use if they're doing self-assessment tax for clients, because one of the things that we found recently is that clients like to keep the odd bank account to themselves. So what we're going to be doing is obviously that can't happen. You've got to declare everything, and I think I mentioned it on here probably a month or so ago now. One of our members was told, no, you can't see that account because that's a joint account and that's got my wife's income on it, and she doesn't want you to see that. Well, we still need to know what income you've got, and it turned out that he got 50,000, I think it was 50,000 or 40,000 pound in there that nobody knew about. So there'll be a form on which you can ask your clients to declare what it is they've got and not got, and then there will be a signature at the bottom. At the moment, I'm hoping it's going to be an online form with an electronic signature so that you've got that, and we're looking at electronic signature for a number of things actually, but particularly in these COVID times, the excuse of, well, I can't get to the post because of COVID and various other things does delay anything which is manual. So everything like that is being looked at. Even though at the moment you can take a photograph of it and send it up with a signature on. So that's something we're looking at. If any of you think that would be useful and you'd like to give us a few hints as to the sort of things which have almost slipped through but you found out about that you think we should be covering, please let us know. Just send that to customer services, market uppers, SAT template -GC or something rather, and then it'll come to me. But that's great.
Interesting little anecdotal comment that came through from a member I was talking to actually several weeks ago now, so this goes back, but I thought I might just mention it. This is probably going to put the cat right among the pigeons, but a client has applied for a bounce back loan, but actually has used that bounce back loan, and it's a fairly substantial bounce back loan, to pay back their director's loan account rather than pay off some of the bills that were accruing, because the bills have been delayed because they got a 3-month payment holiday. And this particular member was sort of asking me, where do we stand as members on that one? And I said very shakily, to be perfectly honest, because that might possibly be one way of, we were talking about fraudulent bounce back loan claims. If you're not actually using the bounce back loan to support the business, but using it to repay the money you've invested into the business, you're not actually using it to bounce your business back. You're using it to pay yourself back for money you've invested in what may or may not be a viable business. So interesting one that might just have occurred to somebody else. I don't know. But as I say, purely anecdotal. I'm not sure. Somebody might just be on a fishing exercise.
In that circumstance, though, wouldn't that mean that that money was there back in the business anyway? It wouldn't go to him, would it? Because he'd already had the money, so therefore it would be back.
Well, the interesting thing is, if they have invested a lot of money themselves and they've got a large debit balance on the director's loan account because they've had to put a lot of money in to keep it going, does the bounce back loan, is it a legitimate use to pay them back what they've already put in? Now, if they've put that in the last couple of months to support COVID, and they've then repaying it back, then that's fine. But if this is money that's been in there long term and they're using it to be able to pay themselves back and are still having problems with paying their bills because the business is perhaps not that viable, as I say, I'm not sure whether that was a member who was perhaps just floating an idea out or whether it was an actual, I don't know. As I said, purely anecdotal, but it's it might be something to possibly watch out for, the uses of the bounce back loans.
That's interesting. I just got interrupted. I had to cancel it. I've got a telephone call coming in from our member in Kosovo. I've been spending the last couple of weeks talking to several of our members around the world and comparing notes on COVID, and we're all in the same boat really. But it's surprising with our members. There's always something going on. We've all got this COVID problem now, but I mean, we've got, for example, we've got a big group of members in Azerbaijan, and they're currently in a conflict over some area with people getting bombed and various other things. We've got the Ukraine that are still finding it difficult. We've got bits of the Bahamas where they've been flattened by hurricanes and everything else. And amidst all of that, our members are still resilient and they're still fighting back and they're still saying, yeah, but I've got a VAT return to do, or whatever the equivalent is, you know. So I'm sitting here with my house falling down around my ears and the wind blowing, but I don't want my client to get a penalty. And the stories they give us are absolutely heartwarming and just unbelievable. And then, you know, some people we're dealing with recently, her husband has just had a liver problem brought about by COVID, but she's still working away, and she's got a daughter upstairs that's not very well. She's got a husband in hospital, but she's nipping backwards and forwards to look after the clients. I mean, the work that our members are doing is just unbelievable. You know, it's just it's above and beyond. And yeah. I think, you know, we're there to support you. So, you know, if it starts to get too much, you need somebody to talk to, you know, just, you know, give us a call. We'll have a chat. We've got some lovely people on the end of our phones. It's not their main job, but they do like talking to members. So let's see what we can do. Jackie.
Okay, we've got one more question come up from, well, it's a comment actually from Michael Stopford. He uses Tax Filer, and Tax Filer has a template questionnaire. I think the tax software does have its own, but this is in addition to that, I think, Gary, because not everybody who perhaps does, oh yeah, that reminds me, filing for company, because something else I must add, does not necessarily use tax filing software for self-assessment. Something came out, actually, Gary picked this one up, so congratulations to Garry on this, because I completely missed this. If you are doing corporation tax returns, as you're probably all aware, you have to use software to upload your corporation tax returns to Companies House. And it has to come under this, it's IXBL format or something. You can't log into Companies House like you can HMRC and actually do the return yourself. Now, apparently this has been around for some time, but it's just been made compulsory that regardless of whether you're doing your accounts under FRS 105 or FRS 102, you now have to definitely, can't say compulsorily.
I hope you've got your teeth sorted out by the time of summit. But
yeah, I will. Have to submit the average number of employees taken on by the business in the year. Now, this has never been compulsory before, but it is now. So there is a field that you actually have to flag now. So Garry picked that one up. Thank you, Garry. I'd missed that one.
I was talking to, I had a meeting with Companies House, a virtual meeting the other day, and they were talking about their system because they've put through a lot of legislation, which means that they can be a bit stricter with who's running a company and who's not. But they were just saying that at the moment, it's really weird because, we can do all sorts of things, but it always surprises me what government can't actually do without a piece of legislation. So the government has not been able to use the figures that go to Companies House for these sort of things because there wasn't a piece of legislation to tell them they could. So they've now done that. And it's nothing, they're not going to, it's not going to be about individuals, but they want to know how many companies are taking on new employees, what the average number of employees is of a company, and all this sort of stuff, which I think the Office for Statistics, Office for National Statistics does a lot of this, but it's a little bit more counting up on fingers rather than actually having specific information there. But the IXBRL system is, I think it's just a fancy word for cloud, but it's there.
Right. Okay. Well, I've been through my list. As I say, it was a long list today. Have you got any more?
Quick thank you to Kirsty, by the way. Kirsty came back. She is obviously a council member, Kirsty St John, and she said she saw the demonstration, and it's the platform that we've got for Summit is fantastic. She's really looking forward to it. So thank you for that, Kirsty. And actually, we've had a lot of emails from the council members saying that they thought it was fun. And it's thank you to Paula Vesey-Smith, the chair, for allowing us to take up quite a bit of her time of her meeting just to show the platform so that they can go out and disseminate the information to the great ICB community that is out there. So I think the time has come, Jack. Let me just check.
Yeah, I think I just looked. I think we've done them all. I will try and get some update on information on the devolved parliaments for next week. I must admit, I was going to look at it today, but I ran out of time. So we'll try and get that up. And I think we've covered everything else that's there.
I mean, it's just a little bit weird that we do find it very difficult to get information about. Wales isn't too bad, but Scotland particularly. I think they want to know why we want to know. And we keep saying, well, it's because we've got a lot of members in Scotland. We need these things. So
I must admit, I get very confused when you hear announcements from the Chancellor as to whether they're England based or UK based, and I have to say I'm working on the basis that everything that I give out is UK based unless I know that it's otherwise, in which case if there's something I've said that it does not refer to the devolved parliaments, then please accept my apologies.
Yeah, I think the annoying thing is at the moment is it's all getting very party political, and really they're messing with people's livelihoods, and I wish they'd sort it out. I mean, we are an apolitical organisation. We don't get involved in politics at all, but I mean, I've had my doubts for a long time about the democratic system in the US, where the president is the top man, but the states all turn against him and decide to do something completely different. And I'm really worried that we're going that way as well. We've got infighting going on. We've got one bit of the country saying it wants to lock down, the other bit saying it doesn't, and we need pulling from the front, I think, in these hard times, really. And it's so confusing. And my granddaughter, who's about to celebrate her 6th birthday, spent half an hour in tears the other day because she's just been told, although she can see all of her friends at school, she can't have any of them to a party at home. So it's I know that is a minor effect, and she'll get over it, and she probably won't remember when she's 26 or 36 or anything else. But it's just one of the many oddities, I think, of the current lockdown. So anyway, thank you very much, Jacquie. A lot of information given today, and as always, very helpful, very useful. We are looking forward to your input at conference, which is a little bit more tried and tested in some of the bigger questions that you'll be concentrating on, and I think that's going to be fantastic. You're going to have a lot of people around you with lots of other bits of information as well. We've got more organizations than you can shake a stick at. It's all great. Thank you again to our major support from all our sponsors, everybody that's been with us in the past when they've been able to have a big stand and they've been able to sit next to you at dinner and all this sort of stuff. They're all still with us. As I said, Xero is our key sponsor, and we're really pleased about that. And we've got the likes of Intuit, Sage, Free Agent, everybody else. There's so many names. They're up on the website. You'll see them there. All the logos are there. But we do rely upon them because although you pay for your seat at the conference, conferences take a lot more time and a lot more effort than perhaps you might imagine. And some of our speakers do require fees, and others need all sorts of assistance. And we've had to come up with a platform which doesn't close down when we get to 1,000 people, because I have a feeling we're going to have several thousand people at this conference. So it's going to be big, and the biggest group of any bookkeeping conference that we've ever come across, I think. So thank you very much. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, everybody, for coming on. Thank you, Iris, for being the anchor today. You didn't see Iris, but Iris has been there working away to make sure that we don't press the wrong button and close everything down. And we will see you next week, Wednesday, Friday. I think once we get through conference, we're going to look at a whole different way of doing this. So we'll do far more of these, but different topics, different subjects, different ways of giving you what you need. So if you've got any ideas of things that you want, things that you'd like to get out of this, it's great to have you saying you're enjoying it. Thank you very much for that. But if you've got any practical suggestions, we'd like those as well. So thank you very much. I hope you all have a very good weekend, a very safe weekend, locked down if necessary, not partying, jollying. And, you know, look, we look forward to meeting you face to face at some stage. We're not sure when, but, you know, we love meeting the members. As you'll know from those of you who've been to conference or to our seminars, etc. It's a great fun time. Those times will be back. We might just be a bit older by the time it happens. Thank you all. Have a lovely weekend.
Have a good weekend, all. Bye-bye.